Hello, welcome to the June 2nd, 2026 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the live stream today. If you've not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field or send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in kind of a real-time manner may soon be impossible with the number of questions that come in. We will go through all the questions chronologically as asked. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if you could avoid asking the same question over and over again, that would be appreciated. You should, when asking questions, it's always helpful if you could specify like which level of Steinberg software you're using. So if it's Cubase, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, which version number, such as 13, 14, 15. Also, if you could indicate which operating system, so if it's Mac OS or Windows, that information is helpful. We should have an index of all of the topics discussed in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream ends. So, and if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com. We have, and we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that site where you could search through over 44,000 topics, over 2,000 hours of live streams. If we also have two people that serve as moderators, Jazz Dude and Agent K. They're not Steinberg employees, but they do it to make it a better community experience. We want to give special thanks to them. We'll also give an extra round of gratitude to Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord site, which is a great resource and very beneficial to the Steinberg community. A bunch of presets, templates, video links, articles that are really beneficial to your use with Steinberg products. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, and I primarily focus on Steinberg products. And I'm the host today. I'm presenting from just in the United States, from just outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching us live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. All right, so we see from Klaus Olsen, just says, hello, Greg, everyone. Greetings from Malmo, Sweden. We have Tim K. It's great to see you on the Zoom social, you and Tim. Joining from Zeist in the Netherlands. His cat Buddy is waving a paw hello to my cat Steven, Mark Raven's dog Stella, Mia, who's Michael Team's pet, and other pets are nearby, and he's ready to learn. All right, so Jazz Dude just shared a link to Cubase Stock Effects tutorials. Thanks for doing that. All right, so we see Carlo, the producer, says how to create a unique fader to control several instruments or sampler tracks, for example. Okay, so there's a couple of different approaches. So let's say if I have... I can come over here. So we could do two different approaches. One is you could create a group track or VCA to control if you need a physical fader or if you just want them linked. So let's say I have a couple instruments, let's say Rhodes. I'm going to select a, sorry, let me just get my keyboard on the correct computer. So we'll have a Rhodes, synth bass, let's say, and a sampler track. And I wanted all these to respond like the volume from a single fader. So what I could do is select these tracks holding the Control or Command key. So Control Windows, Command on Mac. I'm going to right click and we're going to just say add a group track to the selected tracks. So now I could just come right over here and I could adjust the volume for all of these particular tracks. So the audio output from these tracks are all routed to this group, and I can move the group fader, and the group fader will automatically take the volume. Now, if I wanted to see the actual physical faders move, what I could do is, again, select the tracks, hold down Control or Command, and click in the instrument field, right-click, and let's add a VCA track to the selected channels. So now when I go to my VCA, we can see the actual faders move. And if these are, disproportionate, I could come over here. Let's move these. Let's say they're not all at the same value. We could keep the proportionality right there. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to do. So using, so that's if you want to grab a fader. Now, other moves that we could do is, let's say I wanted to take these tracks, and we could also link our tracks. So I'm going to select the tracks in the same way, and we'll go to our link, and we can say we want to link the volume, and we could link other parameters such as panning, EQ, send, inserts, etc. So I'm going to come over here. So now when I move one of the faders, all of the selected faders will move. And if I need to make an adjustment, I can hold down the Alt or Option key over a single track to temporarily suspend the link. And now I could just come back right over there and control the volume. So if you want a physical fader, send it to a group, send it to a VCA. If you just want them all to respond together, you can just use the link functions right there. All right, so we have Stefan joining from Sweden. Great to see you on. We have Uno Memento from Finland. We see Beverly on. You see Jazz Dude's going to be adding more templates soon, probably to the Discord. All right, so we see Jan from Cubase Index joining. We see Jan giving kudos to Jazz Dude for the fantastic Super Cubase forum to unofficial Cubase Nation Discord. All right, so we have Adam Langford checking in from Bedfordshire, UK. All right. So we have my Logify just saying, what's up, YouTube? Thanks for joining us, being part of the community. All right. And I'll try to add cowbells when I make a drum beat today for Beverly. Thanks for joining us on the Zoom social. All right, Adam Langford just says Cubase 15 Pro. I'm getting a warning pop up when I click on Edit Instrument using Halley and Sonic. More preload memory requested than the maximum of 4058. Some samples are not preloaded into memory and therefore cannot be played. Increase the preload limit or reduce the preload time on the options page. Okay. So we'll show you how to adjust that. So let's say if we come over here, we go to Hallian or Hallian Sonic, you'll go to options, and here we could just adjust. So mine is, so on the preload, so if you have, I have 64 gigs of RAM in my system, but you could just come over here. And again, when you click on the options tab right here, you could probably just increase the maximum amount. So how Hallian and most software samples work is that the initial part of the sample will be loaded into the computer's memory and the rest will be streamed from the hard disk. So if you're loading a large number of libraries, you may have to, like let's say orchestral pieces where, and as you're working with the orchestral pieces, with lots of different articulations, you may just have to adjust your preload amount directly there to increase it. And you could also just, there's kind of a balance slider of how much is going to be coming from RAM versus the hard disk. You could adjust that maybe more towards your hard disk, and then it's not going to be so reliant on the preload memory. So again, once you open up Hallian, come over to the options and you could increase the preload or adjust the balance more towards the disk, so less is being loaded up into memory and more of the sample will be streamed from the hard disk. All right. So we see from, is it CKDB 17? So this DAW looks so professional. It does a lot of great stuff. So thanks for joining us on the live stream. All right, great to see Brian Sawyer joining from Yuma, Arizona. Okay, so we see from Zephaniah, it says, hey Greg, how can I add a delay to a vocal part without adding another track using Pro 13 on PC? Okay, so let's come over here. Let's say we have a vocal track.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long.
All right, so once we're here, we could go to like your inserts, and if we wanted to add a delay, so we could just add it as an insert on the track.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long.
And I'll adjust my, let's say our mix.
School parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach. Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long time ago. It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach. Do you recall the day we
So again, we could just kind of come, so we didn't add a track to the vocal. We didn't add a track. We just kind of put the delay on as an insert effect. So now we can just have the delay going on as an insert. So we turn this off.
That was a long, long time ago.
And I'll turn this back on.
It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home. You looked my way and your heart shone through.
So we just loaded that delay as an insert effect. So let me know if that would work for your workflow. All right. So we see from RKO, it says, how can I use the channel visibility to show a selected track along with its related group channels, effects channels, and routing bus? Show selected channels only, shows the selected track itself. Okay, so let's say if I have this going to a group, here I'll just show this here. So if we have like a multi-track drum, okay, so let's say this drum is going into our multi-drum group and that group. So if you select kind of the, if you select the group and the source and do this selected channel. So if we come over here to and say we want to show only the selected channels, select selected tracks, now we could see only those two. Now there is something that a lot of people miss to quickly kind of navigate between the two. So let's say if I'm here, all right, and I'm in my snare track. So let's say I'm in my snare track here, and then when we go here, we could just kind of say, okay, I want to go to the output. So now I'm on the group channel, the multi-drum group, and we can see that my multi-drum group has multiple sources. So I go to my kick drum, and this channel could be going out to Revelation, could be going out to my stereo out. But we could again just come over, and if we want to quickly navigate to the group, I could just click here and see that now I'm in a group channel. And if I click again, I go directly to the stereo out. So the stereo out is being fed by 23 sources. I could click here and say, okay, I want to go back and look at my multi-drum group. So we could just say, okay, once we're here, I go to my multi-drum group. I could see all of the sources just by clicking here and saying, okay, I just want to go to that kick drum. So let's say, so let's just say I'll come over here. So now if we want to, I'll just set my loop here. Alright, so I will come over here. So now if I want to just one mouse button, now I could go to the group, and I can navigate back. So we can say, okay, I want to go to my kick drum. So let's say, okay, I want to go to, so again, we could just navigate quickly back right here. So let's get to my multi-drum. Let's get to, let's say, my kick track where we have this. So where I could apply the EQ. Now I want to go and do the parallel processing. Now I could just click here. Let's go to the compressor. And now if I want to go back, I could just click right here and say, okay, let's go back to our kick track. And we could just easily navigate to and from the different groups. But, so you could quickly navigate to the different routing sources. But if you wanted to, see like the folder or the groups and the different tracks, you could just simply select them. And then at that point, show the selected channels, because if those channels aren't selected, the selected channels won't show them. But you could quickly navigate back and forth between the different types of, the different like routing that you're going to have in Cubase. So. All right, it says the bang sounds good. Hello, Greg. And how do I mix for both surround and stereo in the same session? I also need to deliver both dipped and non-dipped stems. So if you were doing kind of a surround, one of the things that you could do is like while you're in your surround, I don't have this already set up for surround. I'll do a quick fake surround. So I'm not sure if you're doing like object oriented, if you're doing Atmos or 5.1, but we'll just come over here and say, okay, we want this to be 5.1. I'm going to route all of my drums to a 5.1 output here. So let's say I'll take my drums. We're not going to hear in we're doing it like this, but I'll say, okay, let's take this to my 5-1 output. So now all my drums are going to my 5-1 output. Okay, so when we go into our mixer, we can see that all of my drums here, we could now just check my routing. Okay, let me just select all these. All right, so say I'm panning in 5-1, so as we come over here. Now, once you're in the control room, you want to have a monitor set up in our control room. I'll take this monitor away, so it's so when I go to add a monitor, we will configure this as a 5.1. Okay, so now that we are in our control room, we're going to say we're in our 5.1 speakers. All right, and I don't have that routed anywhere right now. Let me just, so we could hear something. So let's go to our surround, and we'll just say, so as I would move, let's say, my snare around, all right, now if you have this, I'm going to create my first 5.1, my first monitor. I'm going to get rid of the other monitors in the control room temporarily. All right, so now let's say if I was doing everything in 5.1, I had my effects all going in 5.1. What I could do now is we could choose to down mix, like to mono or stereo or quadraphonic here in the control room. So as soon as we have like our 5.1 monitors, you could down mix and make everything kind of set up directly in. So for 5.1, and then you could down mix to listen to it in stereo. What most of my friends do, who do like really high level surround mixing, is build the stereo mix and treat that as a separate entity, and then from the stereo mix expand into the 5.1 mix. So they're not necessarily doing it at the same time. They're treating them as kind of different project files. If you are doing everything in Dolby Atmos, Dolby Atmos, you could configure it for most people do the authoring and mixing in 7.14, and then since it's object oriented, it'll automatically mix down to whatever audio channel configuration is going to be on the playback. So if it's mono, stereo, quadraphonic, you have 60 speakers, it'll automatically scale between those two. And that's why some people will do Dolby Atmos, where you don't really have to do a separate mix. It's intended to fold down to your different playback engines automatically. So, but generally most people I know, the Chuck Ainlays, the Elliott Shiners, people who won lots of Grammys for surround mixing will just simply mix stereo and then build to 5.1 on top of that. But and that's if you're doing discrete 5.1. If you're doing Atmos, you could do everything in Atmos, and it will theoretically down mix to whatever channel configuration that you have. All right, let me see if I could restore. My premix, my template here. Okay. Okay, so we see from Adam Langford, says, great, thanks, Greg. Completely missed the options button. I was trying to find it in Cubase. So yeah, it's going to be just directly within Hallian Sonic. And you'd see it the same kind of function in Groove Agent, Full Hallian Sonic. Okay, Beverly Beatty has a question regarding Groove Agent. Once you have samples loaded onto pads, they may be spread across several different grids. Can you stuff them into one grid easily if you only have 12 samples? Okay, so let's come over here. Let me go to... Okay, so let's say I have just a quick Groove Agent here, and I'll drag some samples over. Okay, so let's say here's like 8 samples. I'm going to start them over here. There's 7 samples. Let's do 8, and I'll spread these across different banks. Okay, so now I have like some samples here, some here. All right, so if I want to consolidate all the samples into one pad bank, let's just see if I could select multiple. All right, so I'm going to hold down the controller command key. Let's see if we could copy pads. And I will select these pads and paste pads. Let's see if it will do multiple. Okay, we'll take a different approach. All right, so let's say I think what you want to do, Beverly, is have the drums here and the drums here, but maybe take these drums and have them onto these pads. So I'm going to select these pads here. Just I'll hold down my shift key. Let's say I'll come here. So now all of the pads are selected. I'm going to drag them, and we see that we have 8 groups of 16 pads. I'm going to hover over the other pads, and we see that it will switch between our different pad banks. And now what I want to do is just drag them to the first pad. Let me just try that one more time. I think we could do multiple. So it looks like we could copy one pad at a time. And you could just drag it over like so. Let me just see if I can get multiple here one more time. Yeah, looks like, so we could just drag and drop from one bank to another bank. So let me know if that would be helpful for you, Beverly. Okay, so our next question. So Jackie Barr says, is there a vocal alignment and pitch matching tool in Cubase Pro 15? So there isn't a pitch mapping tool. I mean, if you do Very Audio, you could correct the pitch and that would be the same. But if it's like slightly out of tune on one of the files, it may not match exactly the pitch. So, but if you want to do kind of vocal alignment, we can show you how to do that. And you could do like the alignment for like multiple guitar parts where you have like maybe direct and multiple microphones on guitar or DI and bass. So let's say we'll take this particular, we'll see our background vocals here.
Somos iguales. Somos iguales.
All right, so what I want to do is, and we come over here and we'll see these usually the icon is up here. Let me move. All right, so you'll see like an audio alignment, which is this icon. You could also go to your audio menu and open audio alignment panel. So what I want to do is, let's say I want these files to match this particular file. So I'm going to use this as the reference. I'm going to select these files, and these are the targets. So you could match words, match preferred time shifting, you could adjust the precision. So now when we go to, say, align audio, now as we listen to it,
Somos iguales.
and if we undo that where we were,
Iguales. Somos iguales.
so again, just to align the audio,
Iguales. Somos iguales.
so but there isn't pitch mapping, but there is audio alignment for rhythmic aspects. All right, great to see Benny joining from Sweden. All right, Tim Weinheimer writes, I'm using the drum pattern with Groove Agent 6 SE. I can't get it to sound, which setting should I check? Got a brain cramp. All right. Let me jump back to my other project. Okay. Okay, so let's say I want to, if we're not getting it to sound, so I'm going to add an instrument track to start. All right, I will come over here, and let's say I want this to be a pattern event. I want it to be Groove Agent 6 SE. I'm going to hit add track. I will load up a quick pattern here. Okay. Okay, so I go to my Groove Agent. Okay, so I'm going to go to where we just added the Groove Agent SE. Let's see if this is. All right, and I'm just going to make this a drum pattern. I'm going to go ahead and delete the event. And when you delete the event, try just coming over here and just say play with project. So I'm going to go ahead and just sell this, and let's say if we want to. All right. So I'll just and let's but make sure that you have like this, like if it's not kind of playing, this may be like your one mouse button click to happiness if you're not seeing it, or if it's just play with project. I happen to pick a kit without a cowbell. I was going to add it in for Beverly, but this kit doesn't have a cowbell, so I can't pick that one again in the future for Beverly's sake. So let me know if that icon here does the trick, Tim. All right, so we have AF Major Production joining from Colorado Springs. It's a beautiful area. Been there. Thanks for joining us today. All right, question from Beverly. Adding VST instrument, which shows duplicates under project, instrument. I have some duplicates of VSTs. I can see double. How do I clean this up? So if you see your VST instruments, and if you have duplicates, it could be that these particular instruments are actually being utilized. So I may have a couple of Hallian Sonic instances. So when you go to select an instrument here, if you go to like the VST rack on the left hand side of the right zone, you will see that as you click on a track, that corresponding instrument is highlighted. So before you delete before you delete an instrument, you could just kind of come right over here. So if I wanted to add an instrument track, let's say a retro log, I will come over here. Okay, so we see that now we have a retro log. So if I know that it is not being utilized, like there's no data on this track at all, it's empty. At that point, what we could do is we could see which one is empty by selecting it. We see the corresponding, and then we could just choose when we go to the instrument name here. We could just choose no VST instrument, and then it will become unloaded for you. So you could add the instrument name or just take an existing instrument and choose to click in the name, scroll up and choose no VST instrument. Then that instrument will be unloaded for you. All right. So we see Greg R4C. Hi, Greg. Would you choose Windows or Mac in 2026? I already got a Ryzen 9800 X3D and an i9 3900K system with plenty of RAM. So I'm wondering whether there's enough benefit in moving to an Apple Silicon Mac to justify for 2 to 3K. Is Mac OS really that much more stable, reliable for audio, or would you stick with Windows if you already had high-end hardware? So I think either option, either platform is great, and I've been in this industry long enough when we're trying to do really advanced, like when we're trying to do audio on computers in 1992, and the computers were kind of very unreliable, very finicky, and didn't have enough kind of horsepower or memory. We're trying to do like on a 16 like on an Atari Falcon, we were doing 16 tracks of audio with 14 megabytes of RAM. So so there was a lot, there wasn't as much overhead buffers. If I was, I personally have an i9. I think mine may be a 3900 as well. With 128 gigs of RAM, I have enough money that I could buy a Mac, an the latest M5 processor. I haven't, run out of horsepower yet. I tend to be, we'll say, not cheap, but thrifty and pragmatic. That I'm personally, with my own money, wouldn't necessarily buy something and make an investment if what I had was already working for me. I think, Windows, Mac OS has a lot of great things with it, and there's good stability overall. There's a lot of situations on Mac OS where an update comes out and that could wreak havoc on the entire audio industry. And then there's kind of a, where all the developers have to catch up, and it never seems like all developers are fully caught up to the latest operating system. Windows is going to be much better for backwards compatibility. I use a Mac because that's what, the companies I work for, Yamaha Corporation of America, provides for me. So, personally, I still use my i9 with 128 gigs of RAM. I think I have 7 terabytes of SSD drives, several drives, and I don't feel the need, and I work in Mac OS and Windows. I don't feel the need that I'm missing something running my personal studio on Windows. So, and I go back and forth, and obviously I do the live streams on Mac, but I would have no hesitation doing it on Windows as well. So see if that's helpful. Maybe other people could chime in if they've switched. All right. Roller Coaster Ride says, hi, Greg. What software is best to share Cubase projects in a live stream? Example, SessionWire or Restream, etc. So you could check out, Steinberg has a program called MixKey. So you could just simply use that. So depending on, the live stream, I'm utilizing OBS. But you could come over here and and what this is basically like a software mixer. So you could take like USB microphones, different programs that are on your Cubase, on your computer for Mac or PC, and be able to route that into like a streaming software. A lot of audio interfaces will have loopback. If your audio interface doesn't, check out, MixKey by Steinberg is a great solution for that. All right, wonderful to see John Costigan on from Kenosha, Wisconsin. It's giving thanks to Jazz Dude, H&K, and Jan for everyone who makes the live streams happen. Tim Weinheimer just says, nice to see everybody. Okay, so my chat field jumped. Let me find my spot. All right, so we see from Benny who asked questions, somehow I don't hear anything from that track when I'm in very audio adjusting vocals. It has worked before. Okay, so I think you're going to be kind of one mouse button away from happiness here. So say, go into our very audio editor. So if you're not hearing the changes, like when you move a note, okay, so when I come over here, like here, I don't hear the note as I'm adjusting it. So you probably just need to come over and turn on acoustic feedback, which looks like a little speaker.
My way, my way, my way, my way, my way.
So now as you make your adjustments, when this is turned off, so make sure you have this turned on. And let me know if that makes a difference for you, Benny. All right. And also with the very audio, if, make sure that you're going, so, check that if it's, but it's also generally being routed through the control room as well. All right. Okay, so Zephaniah says, hey Greg, I asked a question wrong. I meant adding a delay on a 2-bar part on a vocal track using Pro 13 on PC. Okay. Sorry if I misunderstood. All right, so let's take a look at our vocal part here. We want to do maybe like a quick throw delay. So say,
oh, the day we first met. That was a long, long time ago.
So let's say we want to just delay maybe the word "go."
That was a long, long time ago.
All right, so let's say if I we'll just come over here. So we could find kind of our spot.
Do you recall the day we first met?
So let's say the word met. I want to throw a delay there. So I'm going to grab my range tool and I'm just going to kind of select an area here. I'm going to go to my audio menu, to processes, and to plugins rather. And I'm going to go over here to delay and say, okay, let's just do a mono delay 1/8 notes. All right, and we'll apply that. So now as we listen to it,
Matt, that was you recall the day we first met. That was a long, long time ago.
so let's say I want to take this phrase and I want it to just do a delay. And like starting here, I'm going to turn my snap off just so we can get. All right, so we'll come over to plugins, delay, and then you could have this turned on for auto apply, or you could just click on apply here. And now as you
Go. It was 7th grade in the school parking lot. Go. It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home.
So let's say, okay, I want to take the word home and do a delay. So you could kind of just select a region that you want the delay to cascade into.
Home. You look my way.
And then you could have this automatically add tails for you, or if you needed to extend longer as well. But just kind of select the area, come over here, say, okay, I want that to do a delay. So audio plugins. And it usually defaults to auto apply. But we could just come right over here. And you could also remove these after. So again, stereo delay on this one. So give that a try. I'll remove all of these. And even after saving the project, you could come back and delete all of the offline processes. So let me know if that's helpful for you. Okay. Okay, so we see a question, how can I separate Tom's channel in Groove Agent SE into high Tom's channel, mid Tom's channel, and low Tom's channel? Okay. Okay, so let's come over here. Say we have Groove Agent going on. And let me just all right, so say I'm here and I'll just program a quick drum part, so where we get all of our toms going here. So all right, so when we go to like our mixer, we can see I have one fader for all of my toms. All right, so we could often see our groups, and now I'm going to go to my toms. Now, if I want these to go out of different outputs, so we go to our mix console, and we see them all going out of one stereo output here. Just arrange the mixer here. So if we wanted these to go to separate outputs, now that I click on the toms, so we have groups, I'm going to click on my toms group. So what I want to do now is we go to the routing here, and I'll just say, okay, I want this tom to go out of output 2, want this tom to go out of output 3, so we could just kind of come over here, and we have our 32 outs, and so we're going to output 2, which is muted. Let's go to output 3, output 4. So now when we do this, so this time is going to its own discrete output. So let's send tom A to output 5. So now we could adjust the volume accordingly. Kicks in here and the room mics. So just let me know if that makes sense. All right, so we see from Jason Sykes, great to see on from South Yorkshire, England. Yeah, and Jazzy's mentioned there was a maintenance update to Groove Agent last week, so I think it's 6.0.3. All right, Tony Trunzo just saying hi to everyone from Australia. Thanks for joining us in the middle of very early in the morning for you. All right, so we see, Greg, can you please tell me why my VSTs aren't showing up when I scan new ones that I purchased? So make sure, it's from AF Major Productions. So it could be, it could be dependent on if you have a VST plugin collection. So let's say I come to my VST plugin manager, and I add a new plugin. If I have a custom plugin collection, so let's say, okay, I'm here. So now I have a custom plugin collection. And if I rescan the plugins may not show up here unless they've been migrated into a plugin collection. So let's say if I'm going to make a new plugin collection, so make an empty one, and I'll just say, okay, here's my reverb. Okay, I want to make a folder called reverb. Okay, so let's say I want to come over, let's say we'll go to Revelation. I want in that folder, I want Reverence. All right, and we'll put that in the folder. Now, if I add a new plugin and I have a custom, I'll come over in here, say, okay, those are some more reverb plugins I want in the folder. All right. And let's just say, okay, now one of the things that you could do, so if you have a custom plugin folder, the plugins don't automatically assign themselves when they're installed into the folder. You'd have to manually come over here and drag and place the newly installed files if you have your own plugin folder. Now, an easy way to kind of make sure that you don't have duplicates, if you click right here, we can say hide plugins that are in this active collection. And now I'm not going to see like the RevX, the Revelation, the Reverence, just because these are already copied over. But I can say, oh, RoomWorks, I didn't copy those over. So now when I copy my RoomWorks, if I show all plugins that are in this collection, so we could show all plugins, and we say, oh, maybe I see it here, but it's not actually showing up in my custom VST plugin collection. That you could just come over here and you could say show plugins and hide the plugins that aren't in the active collection. So if I come over here, let's say I go to this preset, I could see that these are the plugins which are not in this particular setup right here. So if I wanted this plugin, we could easily find this. Now, if it's a VST2 plugin, if you're on Mac OS, you're going to have to run your Cubase in Rosetta mode. And if it's a VST2 plugin, you may have to activate it on the Windows platform for your VST2 plugins to work. But, we always recommend VST3 versions for better stability and integration. So let me know if that makes sense. All right, so we see 54 Beatmaker 54 says in full screen, my key editor and drum editor, drum machine, and sampler doesn't pop up when I click on edit VST instrument. Okay, so let's say I have, all right, okay, so let's come over here to a drum machine track. Okay, so let's say you said in the key editor. Okay, so let's say I'm in a sampler track here. All right, so we will go full screen here. All right, let me see if we have the. I'm going to move this up so I can see it. All right, let me make sure I actually have sampler data in there. Move this over. I don't have any sample in the. Just drop something that's a little longer sample wise. Okay. So let's get to our full screen editor here. All right, so that popped up like the source for the sampler track. Let me just. And I'll just copy this over to drum track. All right, let me see if I have a drum machine loaded up. Okay, I'll try it again here. It doesn't seem like it pops those up. I'll make a note and pass that along to the team. Sorry about that. All right, so we have Briley Music joining from Finland. All right, so we see from JHBH2IR how to disable MIDI CC quantize. So if you're trying to draw in MIDI CC data, so let's say if I'm here, let's say my set to whole note here, and I want to draw in like modulation data, and it's only allowing you to go between that. It could just be your snap is turned on and your quantize value for the snap is set at a high. So if I turn my snap off, now I can draw in CC data. So if I hit the letter J, now I could only, as we go to draw in automation, or CC data, you may notice that it'll only allow you to enter it at, so if I come here, we can only, so if I have my J turned on, I try to go, we'll just go, so we see the bars. I can't necessarily go in the middle, but I could come over here. So just try hitting the letter J, and then you can freely draw in MIDI CC data. So let me know if that makes sense. As you record CC data, it may do an automatic reduction where it just kind of sees it as, unnecessarily superfluous for the actual performance. So if you come over here and, you have 100 little lines, while it may look pretty, may not actually make any difference in the playback of the instrument. So let me know, JH, if -BH2IR, if that helps. All right, so we see Matt Elston on. All right, so we see from Bradley Music, says I just completed the Cubase community survey. Says there are many questions revolving around AI features. Is Steinberg planning to add a bunch of AI features to Cubase? So, obviously that's why they do surveys, to figure out what the customers want and are looking for. I haven't heard, so a lot of times they use this as, a way to get feedback from users and what users are requesting and wanting to do. So if every respondent says that they want AI features, they'll probably start implementing AI features. So some people say, oh, it's just marketing gimmick and I don't feel it's true to, what I want to be doing. That will, have an impact on, future directions of features to be implemented. So usually the surveys are kind of, fact-finding missions and not we've already done something and we want to justify doing this because we're going to say a survey result showed this. So they take the surveys very seriously. If you get a chance to, do the surveys, like for Cubase, in Cubasis, that's really valuable feedback that's a great way to kind of shape the direction of Cubase in the future. All right, so we see Michael Teams joining from Weatherford, Texas. Great to see you on the Zoom social on Friday. Okay, Briley Music just says like button whacked. And kind of going back to the surveys, I filled out the survey just like everyone else does as well. So that's how I get my feedback into Steinberg, one of the methods. All right, so we see Michael Teams has granted Jazz Dude 1 gallon of Renaissance Fair ice cream. Sounds good. Okay, so we see from Beverly Beatty just that she wanted them all consolidated so they could all be played from the same bank on the Akai keyboard. So, makes sense. Let me know if that works for you. All right, so Soren has received 1 gallon of bosenberry ice cream. Briley Music, we had Briley Music had an auto correction, and Sabretooth just says he was auto incorrected. So, all right, Jay the Jolly says hello again. Unfortunately, cannot stay long today, but want to say hi while I had time. Hope you're doing well, everyone. Times are tough. Stay strong in this weird, wacky, wonderful world. All right, so we have Cosmo Musk 1 just waving hi. All right, so you see from Briley Music says, yes, I also consider Steinberg AI features to Cubase to keep up the hype, a form of auto incorrect. So I think Steinberg hasn't really, leveraged the whole AI bandwagon for, seen it for, 30 years ago, or 30, 35 years ago, is multimedia was kind of like the big buzzword that AI is now. So, all right, Cosmo Musk 1 says, I have a question. I'm a beginner and I've created a drum kit for my samples in Groove Agent. I love the player mode, but when I save and open it, the controller mapping isn't saved. Okay, so let's come over and I'll build a quick kit here from scratch. Okay. So when you say the controller mapping, is that like the MIDI notes that are triggering the actual samples? All right, so let's say I'll just do it. We'll come over and say, okay, I'm looking for kick. Okay, so I want that. And let's do snare. Okay. And let's do hat. We'll find a cowbell for. Okay, so let's say. Okay, so I'm going to come over, just make a quick pattern here. All right, so let's say we play this back here. All right. Okay, so let's say now we have this created drum kit with my samples and Groove Agent. I love the player mode, but when I save reopen it, the controller mapping isn't saved. All right, so I'm not sure if it's the mapping, like the MIDI notes that we have here. So let's say if I want to save this as a preset, I'll call this June 2nd, 2026. I guess Beverly is right. Cowbells are to make the beats better. All right, so let's say all right, so now when I play, I'll select this particular track here. Let's get to okay, so I'm going to unload this particular track. So just remove that track. Let me add new Groove Agent. And we'll go to presets. And so we take that. Let's go to, let's say, our player pad here. So that all seemed to recall. Let me know if there's if that's how you're doing it, but that seemed to all recall as expected for me. All right. Let's see, Jazz Dude says about Mac OS or PC, Apple is not more stable, nor is it secure against viruses. That's a myth Apple marketing created and everybody believes. I think Macs crash prettier. So, all right. All right. All right, just reading through comments. So it's all discussion on laptops. Okay. See, IPX Studios is happy switch from PC to Mac. It's the best thing I did. All right, so we have Nevos Music joining from Israel. Thanks for being online with us. Roller Coaster Ride says, thanks, Greg. All right. All right, Nevos Music just says, what's new in Groove Agent 6? So from Groove Agent 5 to 6 is one of the things you'll have is the pattern editor. So that's the first thing. So like the pattern editor, so you can make your own beats very easily like we just did. You'll have the ability to kind of have more extensive mixer, and when you do like your mixing, you could actually break the mixer off, so there will be some additional effects in the mixer. We also have kind of full media bay support. This was also some minor bugs were addressed in the latest update. But when we come over here, we could also break off the media bay window. So if you want all of your media on one particular window, or you could just choose to tuck it back in. So you could browse through like your different sounds. Another big thing in 6 was the ability to kind of resize the plugin. So when we come over, you could choose to make the plugin bigger, smaller, depending on your particular needs. So those are some of the main themes with Groove Agent 6 and some additional kits that come with it. Okay. All right, Briley Music just says, can you show us how to quantize spoken or sung vocal to the rhythmic grid? All right. All right, so let me see. So this may not be. This is kind of completely different grid for this, but we'll give you an idea. So one of the things that you could do is, as you're, if you want to come over, we could do free warping. So if you have like just little tweaks here and there, so this isn't really kind of anywhere near the grid, it's completely kind of independent of the grid. But so we could go into free warp, and what we could do is we could drop kind of like our different warp markers. So we can say, okay, I'm here. So if you kind of drop them at like the start or end of words, now what you could do is like, okay, this word is a little late. When you have the warp tool in free warp, you can hover over and then you could stretch the word. So if it's like, okay, this word really needs to be on beat 2, you can just come over and stretch that. And if you have the snap on, which is again the letter J, you can just have it automatically kind of snap directly to being on beat, like so. So if I wanted this to be on beat 2, I could just snap, and we can see that it'll just snap directly there to being on beat. Another method of doing this, and when you do this, you want to make sure, like when you do a free warp, so let's say if I move this free warp here, like I wanted this note to be right on beat 8, but let's say this note was fine. If I don't have a warp marker there as kind of like an anchor, it'll move everything kind of past that point over. So if I come over here, this entire part will move over. So it's helpful just to kind of place warp markers after, and then it will only move over just that one little section. So sometimes having a warp marker before and after, that will allow you to kind of warp like so. Now conversely, you could also just select the event, and when you go into your quantize settings, you can make sure that audio warp quantize is turned on, and you can say, okay, I want this to quantize to 8th notes. And so now I could just select the audio event and just quantize those notes and have them snap directly to 8th notes. So if we undo that, so as we zoom in a little more, you'll see the notes, and that will just kind of move the notes around to be aligned to the grid. Okay, so we see from Beverly, who asks, where is the sound? Media Bay, loops and samples, choose Beat Agent, Groove Agent 4, type at the top list drums, and then double click MIDI dancehall kit. Why does it only play piano, no drums? It could be that is maybe just the patterns. So let's take a look. I'll just pop over here to my full Media Bay. All right, so if I was looking, so we come over. All right. So let's say we go to follow your loops and samples. Let's see if it's under. Okay. All right. So that's probably over in this Media Bay. Okay. So let's say loops and samples, and then Beat Agent, Groove Agent 4. So we're here. Okay. So right now, when we see the audio waveform, that would indicate that it's going to be an audio file. But make sure that, because you could select, so it could be that you are not looking for audio files, but for MIDI patterns. So let me just come over here, because I think we could. I will just come over here. So we can see like we have Trap Kings. This is a pattern, like a MIDI loop. So there's going to be MIDI loops, and then when we see these, you could see the different patterns. So one of the things that you could do is just come over here. You could reset all the attribute filters. So, and then if you wanted to, say, okay, I'm looking for a category, so if you reset, then you should see all of the different samples as well. But you could pick to choose, okay, I'm only looking for audio files, or I'm only looking for, MIDI files. So, but when in doubt, if something is kind of not expected, just come over here and you'll see the reset attribute filter, and then you'll probably see all of the samples that you're looking for. Make sure you could also just clear out the search here. So, but when you have this will show just like a MIDI loop, and that may be triggering, or if you have MIDI files in there, that may be triggering and auditioning through like a Hallian Sonic piano. All right, so we see from Briley, it just says, particularly now that they're jamming AI in every application. There's obviously great stuff that AI can do, like, the quality of spectral layers, like with the stem extraction, that's using AI algorithms for a lot of spectral layer stuff. You could argue that there's AI used in chord pattern suggestions and randomizing within the pattern editor. But I think a lot of our customers don't want it to be like integrated with Suno, but we'll just see what the customers tell us within the survey. So that's why it's important to fill out those surveys. That's the data that the planning teams use. All right, so we see from Benny, just says, thanks, Craig. Sometimes it's easily fixed. I must have pressed it by accident, but now it works again. So I think that was with the very audio, not hearing it. Yeah, just one mouse click from happiness. All right, great to see John Barry on from Devon, England. Always enjoy watching your backgrounds on the Zoom social meetups. You have to let us know where the background is from. We're all curious. All right. All right, so we see from from Virtual Alan from Scotland. Hi everyone. Is there a way to record an audio track with any inserted effects on that track? So when you're recording audio will go into an inputs channel. And when we come over, let's say, to our channels here, we could scroll over, we'll see these red channels. All right, so these red channels will correspond with not necessarily the mix console, but with the audio connection. So if I go to my inputs here, we can see that we have 18 inputs right here. And then we could see our input channels directly here. Now you could also just, when you come over here, sometimes if you don't see your input channels, you could click right here and just make sure that the input channels. Now when you have an input channel and you click on, let's say I'm recording into this input and I wanted to record through an effect, we could just come over to the input channel and assign that plugin to the track. So if I say, okay, I want to run this through the black valve compressor, so now I'm actually running that directly, and this plugin will be recorded into the audio file itself. So you could just simply place the plugins on the input channels. Now some plugins may cause latency or delay. A lot of the plugins may be zero latency, but if you have a delay, that could be because of the plugin. But just put the inserts on the plugin or the EQs, and for every input channel we could come over here and have the full channel strip. So we say, okay, I want to do my EQ, I wanted to have my compressor. We could just apply these plugins on the input stage, and most of them don't have latency. So as you're just mentioning that, we are kind of at peak prices for memory and SSDs over probably mostly this year, I think last 6 months. So because of AI data centers kind of buying them all up, so the price has gone up pretty significantly. All right, Michael Teams has granted John Barry 1 gallon of Tin Roof ice cream. All right, so we see Alex joining from Mojave, Arizona. Good to see you on the Zoom Friday. All right, so let's say, also Greg, could you give an example of where we would use Wavelab that came with the update on, say, a vocal track within Cubase? All right, so let's say I'm here and I want to do some processing. So I'm going to come over to my audio menu and we'll say edit in Wavelab. All right, let me just revert this since I've warped it. Okay, so come over here. Let's get to edit in Wavelab. So now we could launch Wavelab. Right, usually the file is automatically loaded up. Let me just check. All right, so let's say if I wanted to, come over here to the rainbow, I could find sibilant frequencies. We could also come over if you wanted to do spectral editing. So let's say, okay, I'm here. I also wanted to see where we see the bright frequencies. We could see that these are set up for like the brighter the frequency. This could be more intensity when we're in rainbow. So, we could come over here and do, for mono tracks, there could be a lot of similarities, but I could just come over here. Let's delete this. And then when we do this, we could update this directly back to Cubase. Now, sometimes if you have stereo files, this can make kind of like a bigger difference. There's some really cool stereo editing stuff that you could do. So let's say I have this track here and I want to go to Wavelab. So if you have like background vocals, one of the things we could do now is say we'll go to edit in Wavelab. But we could, if we have a stereo file, we could also just say, okay, I want to see my mid side. So we could say, okay, here's my left and right channels. But now I could say, let's go to the mid side. So, and even with just like left and right channels, I could just edit one channel of the waveform very easily. So let's say, okay, if I wanted to adjust my level here, we want it to be -6 dB. So as we want to do that, so that's like a tricky thing to do in Cubase for some reason, but we could also, just come over here. I want to do, see what my mid side, so let's say it's a little too wide sounding. I could go to, if I wanted to bring the vocals up, I could go to the mid channels or to the side channels, and then I could say, okay, I want this to be -3, and I could bring down the mid and side channels. So just a number of kind of cool things that you could do in Wavelab. There could be some extra cool things with stereo files, but just to have like a different editing paradigm for putting markers in as well. So lots of good stuff that you could do. All right, so we see Roland Stuff joining from Sussex, from the Sussex coast of England. Can't stick around long, but you'll hit the like button and catch up tomorrow. All right, hopefully we'll see you on Friday. All right, we see Randy Lee Music on. It says, and Michael Teams has granted him 1 gallon of banana moon pie ice cream. All right, Peter Raymond asks, before mixing a project, I render all MIDI tracks to audio. I back up an entire project to a second drive. With this workflow, is there any other advantages to using the Cubase project backup process? It can't fail. And, if you've been using computers a long time, like I often help out a guy, and he's notorious and he's been working with computers for 35, 40 years, and he was telling me, and he saves his projects constantly, and he's kind of, and he could be perhaps maybe a little OCD with saving multiple versions, but he was telling me a story once that when he was in college, he lost his doctoral thesis because a floppy disk got stolen from a bag in his car. So having multiple backups is never a bad idea. Having the backup projects, to me, a lot of people don't consider it backed up unless it's on 3 different sources, and 2 of which aren't in the same location. So if your house caught on fire and you needed to access this, so, but if you have all of the audio files and you can get the files in and they're all kind of equal length audio files, you could do that. I would save the Cubase backup just so that you have like all of the Cubase automation information, all of the MIDI assignments, the actual MIDI notes. So I would always err on the side of having too many backups. And it's great to see Peter on the Zoom. He's checking in from Winnipeg. All right, so you see from 54 Beatmaker says, thanks, Greg. As long as I remember, in 1501, the sampler used to pop up even in release notes. It was written in the miscellaneous bug fixes, but a 1502 doesn't pop up. So there is a 15021, which is the latest, but which is what I'm running, but I'll bring it to their attention again and try it on my personal PC, see if I get the same behavior. All right, so you see Beverly Beatty just says, I don't normally click on a MIDI file in the media bay, but I thought it would auto route or auto connect to the drum machine, but all I could hear was a piano for the MIDI notes. So MIDI files don't have the actual, they're not assigned to a particular instrument, so it's kind of just like letters. We think of just the MIDI notes. It's the letters, but maybe the letters aren't assigned to a language. Probably not a great paradigm or analogy. But a MIDI file itself doesn't include like what instrument is playing it. So sometimes you have MIDI files that have a general MIDI, and those will have kind of common instruments and common assignments, but the MIDI file itself doesn't really have that information. If you save a MIDI loop, so let's say if I come over to, let's see if we still have that, the drum part. I may have blown it out. Yeah, but you could, if you export a MIDI loop, so if you have a MIDI loop is from an instrument track, and that instrument track can automatically, when you audition the MIDI loop, will load up the correct MIDI sound, but MIDI files themselves don't. It's not part of the specification. All right, so we see RKO 7409 says in the survey, told him to bring back some kind of rack/FX container, helpful for EDM techno, which to see it end of Futurist, and I can have tears of joy. All right, wonderful to see Kerwin Young on. It's been a while since we've seen you on live. This is just wrapped up teaching semester plus 2.5 weeks of summer course. I missed so many hangouts with y'all on here. Great to see you back, Kerwin. Hope you're well. Thanks for popping in. Okay, so you see from Beverly, just says, when I double-clicked on that media bay and I chose the MIDI file, it only shows the MIDI file, but it auto-populated a SysX track too at the same time. Not sure what Cubase is doing. So depending on what data is within the MIDI file, it may show a SysX data. So, but if you wanted to, I'll just build a quick drum part here again, and we'll show a MIDI loop, like how to work with MIDI loops with this. So we'll come over. All right, so let me just come over here. Okay, so I'm looking for samples. All right, so I'm just going to type in kick. Now I'll make sure this isn't. right, so let's say I have, or I'll just load up my preset that I made. All right, so let's say we have this. So we made a pattern here. So let's say we have this pattern. Okay, so let's say now when I come over, we could say, okay, I have this particular pattern selected. This is going out to an instrument track. And now I could export it with as a MIDI loop. So we'll say okay, so now when I want to preview, we'll come over and say, okay, let's go to user presets, and then I think we'll see our MIDI loops in here. All right. All right, so that's the kit with patterns. Let me just find the MIDI loops. But yeah, so you can, let me just look, see if I can find them quickly in the large media bay. Sorry about that. So now we can say we're looking for MIDI loops. And here's our June 2nd MIDI loop. So I'm going to drag this MIDI loop. And now when we go to audition the MIDI loop, it will automatically play. So the MIDI loop is like a MIDI file with the routing for the virtual instrument automatically stored. So if I drag over that MIDI loop, it's going to load up the instrument, and with that particular MIDI loop playing back. So MIDI files don't contain the instrument sounds, but MIDI loops do. Okay. You know, Memento says, great to see everyone on Zoom. All right. So my chat field jumped. All right, so we see Tim K says Greg's comment about crashing pretty reminded me there's an ancient but still amusing YouTube clip called Crash Different. I'll have to look it up. Okay, reading through comments still. All right, so we see from Yazian, great to see you on, how to change MIDI with the loops and samples from the Steinberg assistant. So if you're, let's say if we're over here and we're into loops and samples, so if you want to change the MIDI, we don't change it necessarily within here, but let's say if I come over and now that I drag it over into the project, now we can edit the MIDI data. So let's say if I come here, so again, if I drag in a file here, so we have, these are all different MIDI loops. And if you wanted to edit them to, you could just double click on the event itself and be able to edit in the MIDI domain right there. Let me know if that's what you want to do. All right, so great to see Tiago joining from Brazil. All right, so we see from Virtual Alan just says, thanks, Greg. I simply forgot about the inserts on input channels. I hide them by default. Thanks again. So thanks for being on the live stream, asking questions. All right, so we see, it says, hello, Greg, this is Vishnu from India. Question, how can I quickly expand and close all folders together in Cubase 15? All right, so let's say I have a project here. All right, so let's say I redid the built-in template. I redid it. It goes to Iconica Sketch. I redid it for Adam Langford, who's on for the to use the Iconica Opus instruments. So let's say I have a number of folders here. So strings, woodwinds, brass, percussion. Right. So I have a number of folders. I'll just hide my lower zone. So if I select all of my folders and we go to project, you'll see under track folding, you could toggle selected tracks if you want. So let's come over here. So project, track folding, unfold tracks. So project, track folding, and then you could come over here, fold tracks. And you can assign that to keyboard shortcuts or or like a MIDI remote. So let me know if that's helpful for you. And I think I sent this to Jazz Dude. If you just recently got Iconica Opus on sale, I think it still might be on sale, and you wanted the symphonic orchestra template set for all the Iconica Opus. I think I emailed Jazz Dude yesterday or the day before to put it onto the Discord server. So if you didn't get it, Jazz Dude, let me know. Okay. All right, so we see from Tim K, just talking about evolution of Steinberg products. All right. All right, Beverly BD just saying, I can't say enough, peeps, save your stuff on multiple discs. I lost a year's worth of Cubase music recently. Sorry to happen to you. It's always a bummer. All right, so you see that summer has come to Finland. That's good to hear. All right, so we see on in DNB, if I wanted to go over to the newer Cubase from Cubase 5, what would I see in differences? So it's about 15 generations beyond Cubase 5. So, it'd be hard to, like, 6 added, like multi-track drum editing and quantizing was one of the themes, and getting into more of like note expression data. 7 incorporated the new mix console design. 8 was chord pads. 10 was kind of a really kind of overall graphic user interface enhancements and new Vari audio. So there's probably 2,000 new features, if 2,000 to 3,000 new features from version 5. So it'd be hard to kind of go over in detail, but I think most of your workflow that you have from Cubase 5 would still work in Cubase 15. All right, so we see Gerald Ely joining from sunny California, from Martinez. Glad you can make it. All right. Okay, slowly catching up here. All right, so we see from Tiago says question feature request to include user project templates, project logical editor presets, control room presets, and other stuff, and user profile export. So I believe, I'll just check again. I believe that your control room presets, and I think the project templates are, but maybe not the project logical editor presets. Let me just do a quick search. So your plugin collections, track controls, I/O settings, its preset configurations. I believe that would include. So I think it does everything except for the let's see if there's a link to like Steinberg help with it. So key commands, crossfade presets, quantize presets, plugin collections. So I see for the input and output buses, maybe not control room, but I'll mention that to the team again. So, but the logical editor presets, if you want an easy way to back them up, I know it's not included, but if we come over, let's say to our project logical editor, we get a setup, you'll see if you just click here, show the user presets location, then it will take you directly there, so you can see your project, logical editor, and logical editor presets right there. So you could probably back up that under your user presets, but I can understand the desire to have it all included in the profile manager. Okay. See, Michael Teams has granted Gerald 1 gallon of chocolate eclair ice cream. All right, so Jazz Dude just says use at least 2 computers and mirror all important SSDs. So if one goes on fire, you just switch to your PC, and then at once outside your room and poison smoke. All right. All right, so we have a question from Gerald Ely. It says, when using the tap rhythm in a multi-tap delay, the cursor starts in the middle of the grid. Why isn't it on the downbeat? Because I think usually when you're doing the tap, because it's usually not going to do a delay. It's not going to do a delay when there's usually audio or a source on the downbeat. So we'll take a quick look at it here. So let's say we want to experiment a bit with the multi-tap delay. We'll kind of give a quick overview of the multi-tap delay because it could be a little daunting for people, but I think if people understand what it does, it's really pretty amazing. Probably the most comprehensive delay plugin available. So let's say we have just a snare on a downbeat. All right, I'm going to put a multi-tap delay on, so we'll open this up. All right, and I'll just start this from blank. So we'll go to our delay, and we'll do a multi-tap. All right, so right now it'll start. I have just a half note delay, and I will take all of my feedback down. So let me just. All right, so we have a half note delay with no feedback. So we have the 1 note here. We hear the delay. Now with our multi-tap delay, we could switch to be a digital vintage, where you could hear that the delay will have a lower quality, or you could have it be like a tape delay. Or if you want to go crazy settings. So let's say we'll do digital monitor. Now if I want my delay to have feedback, so let's say I want to do a 1/4 note delay. All right, now where we could get really interesting results is I'm going to put this to, let's say, a whole note. And now we could add taps. So these could be like kind of independent delays. So we could add these in. So if we want to do like 8 delays. Now we could also just put these and record them. All right, so I'm going to click on the record, and we'll see 1 measure since we're in a 1 measure delay. And now I could just kind of tap in. So a lot of times, depending on the material, you can move it to your delayed source. And we could now choose, because a lot of times, depending on the material, you may not want a delay to be, where the actual material is starting. So let's say now, but you could move it. So if we want to quantize these to be kind of different, I could put in like a fourth delay. So let's say I want to put in like a okay, so let's quantize those. Now, once we have our delays, we could also come over here and we could add different loop effects. So if I want to click here, I could now say, okay, I want all the delays to be run through like a phaser. Or we could come over here and let's take a look at our independent delays. So I'm going to go to the tap effects. And as we look at our tap effects here, let's go to our, so let's say I want to put a reverb on the taps here. So I can say, let's go to the reverb. So you hear the original source dry and the taps with reverb. So what I want to do now is let's adjust kind of our reverb mix. So let's say I want my reverb mix to be down. So we'll choose our mix and I'm going to choose, let's say, our time. So I'm going to click over here. Let's select time. And now I'll say I want my reverb time where we have more space. And now that I see my reverb time, I want these that are closer together to have less reverb time. And let's throw in maybe panning. So I want to take just these two taps and adjust our panning. So I could come over here to my panorama. And let's put on a filter. So say I want no filter except for the last delay tap. And let's come over here. Let's add a pitch shifter. So we want to adjust our tuning. So we could just come over here and apply kind of like global effects, post effects after. So if now we want to come over and put an auto pan. If you wanted to, or just different effects here. But so you have 8 different taps that you could work with and just kind of experiment with different functions and different effects so that each delay tap could have their own effects. But generally you don't really have the delay at the beginning because it needs, generally the event itself will be delayed, but you can move it if you really wanted it at the beginning depending on your source material. So again, we just take our snare. Now we could take our different, and let's say I want to make this into half note delays. Or quarter notes. Or let's make it into So you could really come up with like incredibly powerful delays using the multi-tap delay. So experiment with it if you haven't. All right. So we see Balsa joining from Montenegro. Thanks for being online with us. Okay, so we see from Alex, hi Greg, is there a way to preview sounds for Hallion outside Hallion 7, which doesn't have that capability? All right, so let's open up a Hallion 7 instance. All right, I'm just going to load up just a single instrument here. Okay, so we'll start with altered wave. All right, so I think that once I have this selected, let's come over here to our media. We'll go to our VST instrument. So I'm just going to have this selected. Let's come over to Hallion. All right, and I will come to, let's say, FM Lab. Or did we choose Create? So now that I have a sound loaded, I could just click here, play a note, and then we're previewing. So let me know if that works for you. So I think if you load a sound once and then you select it and come over to the media bay, that you could just and let's come over, let's say if we go to the different library, like the Carrier 8. So let me know if that works for you, Alex. All right, so we have Michael Marshall joining from Somerset, UK. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us today, being part of the community. So John Barry VU says, hi Greg, does your Iconica template have the attack compensation? Cheers. I didn't put it in, but I could work on adding that over this week. But yeah, I will take a look and see if we could get that going. So we could, I just kind of did the extraction of the, of the key switches for the main instruments, but I'll go through and see if I could get the attack compensation for the different instruments. Thanks for mentioning that. Maybe by Friday, if I have some time off, a little extra time tomorrow and Thursday. All right, Captain Energy Music in Pennsylvania is listening while working. We won't tell your boss. All right. Millard Brown joining us also from Pennsylvania says, hope everyone feels well and happy. All right, so we see Jazz Dude says template is already added to the download section. Thank you for putting that up. All right, Mr. Fleamino, 9350. Why did they take out the synth Prologue after Cubase 15? I only have it on Cubase 10.5. What you could do, so it wasn't one of the instruments that wasn't going to be updated. We did it in conjunction with another development team, and the development team doesn't exist anymore, and it wasn't going to be updated for working with like Windows 11 properly, and also working in Mac OS, utilizing the like the M1 processors. It was never going to be updated for Apple Silicon. So there are, if you're on the Windows platform, you might be able to Google a method to still have it show up in your later Cubase versions. So, let's see. Grateful Fred Music says easy on the pretty crash. So I'm almost offended. So sorry. All right, my Logify says, would you say no to a nice Yamaha piano, Oder Yamaha guitar, or who would say no? So I'm not sure if it's in order. So I have a Yamaha grand piano, and I do have a Yamaha Revstar guitar. So they make wonderful instruments, obviously. So I like instruments. Think they all need good homes. So. All right, so Tiago says, Greg, please include a template for backup. Recently I had to format my PC and lost all my project templates. Tiago, if you want to email me, I could, so we see about the templates in the backup. Okay, I will mention that as well. If you have any projects that were made from those templates, what you could do is come over here and you want to import, and you want to build a template quickly from them. If you come over here to import, and you say tracks from project. So let's say I come over here, this is my project. I'm going to choose to not incorporate automation, and let's say the events and parts. I'll select all, and I'll come over here. And this will basically make the whole project without any of the audio files that was, perhaps used from a template. Then you'll be able to just, if you do a new project, all those different sounds will be, and then you could save it as a template again. Sorry that happened to you. All right, so we see, unfortunately, the Iconica sale is no more. I missed it. So. Okay. So my Logify says, imagine a beautiful Yamaha Pacific professional guitar. All right. All right. So we see, from Alex says, in Media Bay, when I search by plugin, I only see Halion 4, Sonic, and Sonic SE, but no Halion 7. So check to make sure if you go to your Media Bay here, you should see, like in your VST Sound, make sure that all of these are checked, and make sure that also that you have, that you own a Halion 7 license. Halion 7 is sold separately. It's not a part of Cubase. So if you haven't purchased Halion 7 as a standalone or as part of a bundle like the Absolute 7 collection, it may not show up for you. All right, so we see in a later comment from Alex that he has howling in 70 degrees, much better in contact. So make sure, like, there's utility that when you come over here, if you're not seeing in Media Bay, one is just to come over and make sure that when you go to howling in 7, open up 2 utilities here. Okay, so make sure that when you go to like My Products and you go to, I have mine in my Absolute collection. So let's say if I come over here, we will go to VST Instruments and Plugins. So scroll down to howling in 7. And then, there's the content here. Make sure that you have all of this content installed. So you should see like a green check with install again as a, to indicate that those are installed. If that is installed, come over to your library manager and see when you go to your howling instruments, if you're seeing your howling instruments here. If you're not seeing a lot of the instruments, you can just simply go directly to where the .vst sound file is. If you search for .vst sound, you could double click on a VST sound, and that should make the connection between your instrument, where that sound set is, to the instrument. So the next time you're in Cubase, you should be all set. Okay, let me go to some of the questions that we had mailed in. All right, let me just go to them. All right, so we had a question: how to do comparative EQ between 2 different tracks. Okay, so let me just jump to project here. Okay, so let's say I'm having problems in my mix with my bass, and as we're going along, my bass and my kick drum aren't working well in a mix. So their kind of EQs are clashing, and we just want a way to not kind of do like dynamic compression. We just want to EQ kind of against them. So I'm going to solo my bass part here. All right, and let's take our kick drum here. All right, let me just see if this is probably maybe. All right, so I wanted to apply the EQ. So I'm going to open up the channel EQ of my bass, and I can see the bass here. So we EQ the bass. All right, but what I want to do is to look at the kick drum as well. So if we come right over here, we could say, okay, I want to see my bass part. We see in blue, and I could select a different track. So I'm going to take my kick 414, And once I come over here, I could click, and now when I apply an EQ, we could apply that EQ. So, and now when I apply the EQ, we see the orange color. This is my kick drum. And when I click here on the bass part, so I could just kind of switch back and forth. And just EQ and see the particular frequencies. And make your EQ choices. And if you want to come over here to the setup, you could also adjust kind of the transparency for the comparison channels if you wanted those to be less transparent. But again, you could just switch back and forth and see exactly what's going on to make sure that those two channels aren't conflicting, and you could EQ against each other. Don't need an AI function for that. All right, we had another question, was how to sidechain into the auto filter from a drum sound into a pad and gain rhythmic activity and then not listen to the sidechain source. Okay. So let's come over. Okay, so let's say I have a drum part here and a synth pad, so we'll go ahead and listen to it. All right, so I want maybe a filter to follow the rhythmic characteristics of the, so we'll have it follow the characteristics of the drums. So I'm going to, on the synth pad sound, we're going to go to the auto filter. And I'm going to set up a sidechain input. So I'm going to activate the sidechain. We'll come right over here, add the sidechain, and I want it to be the Afro beat. So as I play around with this, we can now see. And you could come over here and adjust kind of different filter types. And you could have it a long attack and maybe a short release or a long release. So you could play with the. Now if I want to hear that activity but not the actual drum part, I would select the drum track and on its output set it to no bus. So it's still triggering the sidechain, but we're not hearing the sidechain source. So if we muted the track, then we wouldn't have the sidechain because it's not, the track isn't passing audio to go out to the sidechain. So, but if we now send the output routing, send it to no bus. Okay, so again, if I took off the sidechain input, but now having it rhythmically triggered by the drum part that we don't hear, or if we want to hear it. So that's how you could use kind of the auto filter plugin for working with different sidechain sources. Okay. me jump back, see if there's more live questions. All right. All right, let me just... All right, so we see Jazzy posted a shimmer tutorial. All right, we see Mark Rabin on. Everyone give a big woof to Stella, Mark Rabin's dog. It says, woof and gratitude. Been dug in, back in action. Missed y'all. Thanks, Greg Jazz. And Stella says, hi, Mia and Buddy and Steven. Let's learn something. He's got questions. All right. Okay, so we see from Fernando Jose Matias. Hi, Greg. I was delivered a bass recording with some ground loop noise, steady high pitch harmonics on fixed frequencies. How can I use Spectralayers Pro to learn those harmonics and apply a cleanup? Let me see if I have... See if we have some noise in mics here, maybe. Let's see if it's maybe in a guitar. All right, so let's say we have like a little hum on this guitar part. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to take this particular track. So we hear this in the guitar. Let me just... We'll amplify it here. Okay, so I'm going to take this. We're going to go to our extension. And we'll go to Spectralayers. Okay, so we'll go full screen here. All right, so let's say we have... So I'm going to take just this particular selection. And if you have it where you see it, so let's say I'm going to just take this and... All right, and I'll move some of the frequencies here a little higher. Okay, so let's get to our modules. In Spectralayer. And we're going to say denoise. We're going to set this, we're going to register that noise. And let me just... And let's just take this one track here. So we hear it in the other track, but now that we have done that, we just kind of eliminated that noise. So if we undo in Spectralayers here, and let's just, I'll just solo this track, I'll pan it in the center. So again, I'll come over here to Spectralayers and let's So find just that bit of isolated noise. Come here to the modules. Denoise. So we'll register that noise. We undo. So try that. All right. All right, you see Jazz Dude posted the link for Spectral Layers 12. All right. Everyone's happy Mark Rabin is on. And Mark has received 1 gallon of strawberries and chocolate ice cream for him and Stella. All right, so you see Daniela. Here's new proud owner of a Yamaha Disclavier grand piano. Yeah, I have my mother-in-law had passed on a Disclavier for us, like an early one, I think from '89, like a 5.5 feet baby grand. All right, so we see from Alex says, however, I do see Hallion 4 library and instruments that came with Hallion 7, like FM Lab, Eagle, etc. So if you see those, so you may not be listed as like an F when you look at it. So say we come over here to our media, we go to VST instruments. So generally, when you go to Hallion, it's not going to be listed as like, all of the Hallion. Like some of the previous versions, you may see like, Hallion library, HS3 combos, Hallion 4. But, if you see all of these libraries, I may have additional ones. But, it's not listed as a Hallion 7 library. But, you'll see like writing rooms, which comes with 15 rolled percussion, rolled instruments, voltage comes with it. So if you see like different instruments listed under here, as you mentioned, FM Lab, Eagle, then those all work, but you won't see a Hallion 7 category. You'll just kind of see the different like families of instruments that work in Hallion 7. Okay. Okay, sorry, my chat field jumped. All right, you see Michael Teams is giving Daniela 1 gallon of banana nut ice cream. All right, you see Mark Rabin has given Michael Teams a pizza. So, sounds good. For all of his kind ice cream distribution. All right, so we see Soren says, nice, Greg. Thanks for the info about the sidechain and away with the drums. My follow-up question to you is, with the gate on and the attack release at 0, I started to get stabs played by the pad. How to switch instruments with those stabs. Smart way. Is there a smart way? All right, let me clear my throat. All right, sorry about that. All right, so let's go back to our example project here. All right, so let's say I just have this going into like a retro log. All right, let's turn this down. So if I wanted to so my follow-up question is, with the gate on, attack release is look for it. Says, can I switch instrument with those stabs? The smart way, is there a smart way? All right, so let's say this is now just triggering a sound in retro log. So if I wanted to right now, let's say this is, I have this track selected and I want it to go to maybe like a Hallian instrument instead. So when I go to my VST instrument here, I could go to a different instrument. So let's say now I want it to go to find like maybe a pad. So let me know if that's kind of what you're looking for. All right. All right, so we see Lawrence checking in from Barn Door Recording in Rhode Island. Thanks for joining us. All right, Michael Teams wants jalapenos with his pizza. Just curious if Michael can get pizza delivered where he lives. I know he's kind of rural in Texas. All right, so we see from John Barry, he says, there's a maintenance release for Graviton 6, but before I update, I would like to know if not being able to name kit pads on acoustic agent kits has been fixed. We'll take a quick look. I haven't updated it on this computer yet, but let me just go to my download assistant and see if I could get it. See if it'll allow me. I didn't see it mentioned in release notes. I didn't get a chance to try it, but we'll see if this will. See, may have to close down my Cubase, but maybe I could just open the window real quick and test it. Okay, let me see if I can open the window, if that will, without having to close down Cubase. I'll just load a kit. So let me know. Looks like I just renamed the pad there. Let me know if that looks like it's working for you, John. So that was an empty pad. I'm not, just to see if that would work for you. All right, Miller Brown's giving me a big woof to Stella. All right, so we see Fernando Jose Matias is calling me a goat. All right, I just try to help people. All right. All right, so sorry, my chat field jumped. Okay, so you see Mark Rabin says he's happy to be here. Seriously happy to be here. Love strawberries and chocolate ice cream, but no chocolate for the dogs. No avocados, grapes, onions, garlic, or walnuts. Interesting. Didn't know all that. All right, so we see John Barry's looking forward to template with the attack compensation on. All right. Jay Douglas Morris says, thank you for his training. I'm new to Cubase, having a difficult time understanding it, especially coming from 26 years of Pro Tools. Step by step is very helpful. Well, welcome to the Steinberg family, and just let us know anything if we have to do translation for you or a different workflow approach. We're here to help you. So thanks for being on with us today, and we hope to see you on many future live streams. All right, so we see Jay Tyler, 6203 question. How do I stretch or shorten drum loops in audio track to fit tempo or timing with no gaps? Okay, so most drum loops will have a built-in, will have tempo information. So we'll start from scratch. So let's find a drum loop. All right, so you get lots of them with Cubase here. All right, so let's say we will do laid back house, and we're looking for drums. All right, so let's say right now my project is set to 120 beats per minute. 120 beats per minute. If I look at this, we can see that coincidentally I picked, all right, let's find something with a different tempo. A lot of these are around 120. Let's do. All right, so I'll just do generic drum loop. All right, so so let's say this tempo of this is 175 beats per minute. So when I play loops, these may play back at their native tempo. Now, when we actually click right over here, we could just say, we'll see this little music note, and this will link it to the project tempo. So regardless of whatever tempo, if the tempo information is in the original file, it's now going to play back at my original tempo. So let's say here I have a loop. So since I had this on as I was previewing it, it would drag that loop in. If I had this turned off and I drag this loop in, at this point, it's going to play back at its original tempo, but it's not going to automatically fit the bar. So when I click here, we could just say musical mode. And once I click on musical mode, that will automatically adapt to the project tempo. So if I put this into musical mode again, now if I have this music note on and drag it in, it's automatically placed into musical mode. When this is turned off, it's not placed into musical mode. It's playing at its original tempo. So if you select this and choose musical mode, this will automatically follow the project tempo. So if we play along, and now if I change my tempo to, let's say 96 beats a minute and hit play, all those files will now follow whatever tempo you have. So if you have a drum loop, and if you have a drum loop and it has the tempo information, and what you can do is just select it and just put it into musical mode right there. Then it's going to play in time with your project. All right, Uno Momento wants people to whack the like button. All right, Millard Brown has whacked it. Right, so you see Gerald Ely says he's been working on recording guitars with the studio multi-tap delays and it's blowing his mind. All right. All right, so we see from Alex just says, so there's no Halion 7 content library per se, as I see with Halion Sonic or Halion 4, which I never owned. Thanks. Yeah, so it's just like, when you get Halion 7, it's obviously the 7th generation of Halion, and if you had projects, if you're a user, since Halion 1, and you've updated all along the way, all the content that came with Halion 4 is available to use. And then when Halion 5 came out, there's a whole new range of content, but we don't necessarily take the old content away because we realize that many people have used them in productions and used those particular content in songs for years and years. So we still have the opportunity to, offer that content for, older projects for project compatibility. All right, so we see from Da Vinci Girl says her Disclavier got lucky. It was from 1995 and fully functional. Got it for 2,500 euros. There was recently a Yamaha technician who did his take on hands for maintenance. It's great. They're beautiful instruments. So, all right, so we see from Gerald Early says, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Thanks for all you do, Greg. I have to step out to go vote. Everyone stay safe. That's great that you're able to go out and vote. It's an important thing to do. So, all right, Michael Teams has a pizza place about a mile from his house, but no delivery. Well, that's a bummer. All right, so we see Mark Ravens. How big a footprint should the library drive have to fit all Steinberg, VST, VST3, Wavelab, spectral layers, and logical amount of recording space? My 15 Pro says about 1K hours in a bar. How much space? So, I think... I run a lot of it on a 1 terabyte drive. I think that's probably a good place to be. And it could depend on, like how many, like if you have Iconicus, Opus, that could be a lot of additional files. The Grand could be a lot. If you have A2, that would be a smaller size piano. But you can get an idea, I think, in the download assistant, like how big each file would be. So like your Cubase is going to be like 1 gig. All the content that you get with Cubase is going to be, I think, about 30 some gigs. You have 23.79 of loops and samples. So, for different things. So I think a terabyte is probably a good place. I could take a look to get a rough idea and do the math and share it on Friday's live stream if you want. Okay, so we see from Soren says, Greg, maybe I could email you, explain better. It's always a problem with large questions here. I want stabs to be clear piano or organ, not different kind of filter sounds. So if you want them to be more kind of, if you want them less filtered, so let's come back, instead of using the sidechain to the filter, which is like the example you sent, but if you want kind of the same rhythmic aspects, so let's come over here and I'm going to take off the auto gain filter and let's just replace it with a gate. So I'm going to go under dynamics to gate. Okay, so let's switch this instrument we'll just do like an etude piano. Okay. So now we'll play this. And I'll just... Alright, so now I'm going to do the gate. And let's have the gate sidechained. And you could kind of set your so yeah, maybe you experiment with kind of the maybe that could give you kind of more of the results that you're looking for. But if you have other examples, please feel free to email me. Okay, so we see from John Barry is like set on the kit pads, the acoustic agent. So we'll try that again. Let me do it in the window, so I don't have to reboot and close all my Cubase projects. All right, so let me see if this is the latest. Yep, okay. So is it naming just an empty pad? So let's see if I yeah, it might still be the same. But if it was kind of creating an empty pad and then naming it within the acoustic agent, let's see if I come here and we do the I'll try it with the full groove agent just to make sure. So I think if my memory's serving, you wanted to, on the kit pad, to maybe rename an empty pad. Let me know if that was the case. I'll leave this open in the background, John, if you need to clarify. Okay, so it says, hi Greg, using F2 shortcut key on acoustic agent kit pad. All right, so I don't know if you need to do it on an empty pad. So let me know if you need it on an empty pad. I'll leave this open in the background so you could jump back, John. All right, so we see Michael Teams has granted myself and my family 1 gallon of fresh apple pie ice cream. So appreciate that. Alex says you could use her. Michael Teams could use his Tesla Optimus robot to go get pizza for him. All right, so we see for Alex says, thanks for your help, patience, and kindness, Greg. It's much appreciated. So it's a joy to be able to help people. All right, so we see okay, so we see for Soren, says Greg Workplug, have his one, have the drum track pad going to no drums, auto filter set to rhythm 3, record the rhythm to an audio track, create hit points to MIDI notes, and the audio do create chords thing, and follow chords as already shown, and switch instruments as I want on the chords. I wonder if there's a smarter way. I bet there can be. I'll send me kind of like, a list of that again, and I'll see if I could come up with something for Friday that could maybe optimize the workflow a bit. I'll give it some thoughts and workarounds and stuff like that. All right, so we see from Jay Tyler, says, thanks for the drum loop tempo answer. That helps. All right, great. All right, Beverly Beatty says, ding, ding, liked. All right. All right, so we see from Alex, you see it's possible to buy resold licenses by other people. Is there a specific website where I could go to, say, find out about Iconica? So let me just look, see if it's on the Steinberg website about transferring licenses. Yeah, so if you go here to the Steinberg resale wizard, so try looking for the Steinberg software resale wizard, and you might be able to go through that. I think that will give you the information. All right, we see John Barry ended up with the spare Iconica Ensembles license. Maybe you could talk to Alex and see if he was. I think he was missed it on the sale. All right, so we just see Mark Rabin says he's thinking about external drives. He has 2 internal ones. I have a USB-C powered hub, but it's been a point of issue in my setup. AI thinks bad things about it. Yeah, and yeah, so sometimes there are different levels of power that go to USB hubs, and also which port you're connecting it to in your system. On your, if you have a desktop PC, some of the connections that you plug into may in fact itself be a hub off of the main USB controller. So try other USB ports as well. All right, so we see from John Barry about the groove agent. Says yes, on an empty pad you need to select color first. All right, so and yes, I did want to rename them, but also handy to rename the kit pads with added layers. So both really. So it doesn't seem like that is changed. Let's see if I come. Yeah, still doesn't. This is. Let me see. I'll try it on. Let me see if this has been updated. This is probably still the old. I'm not sure if I updated Groove Agent by itself. So I'll update that and we'll come back to it. So I'll install that and we'll come back to that, John. Exit new window. All right, we'll let this install, then I'll try opening up new window. Okay. Yeah, it still doesn't seem like there's a rename function there. Sorry about that, John. I'll bring it up to them again. All right, so we see from Millard Brown. Greg, question about the arranger usage. Is there any way to control which of multiple tracks will play back on a particular iteration of a section? Must all that sort of manipulation be in the post flattening? So within the arranger track, it's going to be global for all of the tracks, and then you could mute different elements in. And just for those people that aren't familiar with this, let me see if I have it in my recent projects. Yeah, doesn't like that project. All right. But yeah, you would have to flatten it, and then you could mute the individual parts as it's being within the flattened event. All right. All right, so let's see. From Jazzy Lamel says, greetings, Greg. Is there a way to have a Cubase custom template come up as a default when starting a new project? I don't think so. I think that there might be a preference for yeah, I think that you could do open last project on startup, but that may not be like a template, so you'd have to kind of manually select the template. Okay. Okay, let me go to, I think we had a couple other questions that were mailed in. All right, so we see a question, how to get the clip gain modifiers to work on audio files in Nuendo 15. All right, so sometimes when we are in, I'll just go back to Nuendo. So when we're in Cubase, if you know this trick, a lot of times some people may complain that when they come over here and let's say the part is small, that they have to go to the lower left-hand corner to adjust the clip gain. There's also another method, and I think it's defaultly defined in Cubase as being command or control plus the shift key, and then you could just kind of hover over the event itself to adjust the clip gain. So you'll see it kind of turn into pencils. So if you don't want to go to the lower left-hand corner, you could just grab anywhere and adjust your global clip gain. But by default, this combination isn't turned on inside of Nuendo, and we'll show you how to do that. Okay, so when we try to do the same thing, so control or command plus the clip gain, and often this will just simply doesn't tend to work the same way. So to get that functioning in Nuendo, you would go over here to your settings or preferences, and then you'll see Under editing tool modifiers, we'll select the select tool, and then it's going to be under edit velocity. So there already is kind of a command shift. So I'm going to hold down, I'm just going to replace that and say, okay, and you'll see right here, we'll say, let's go to command shift, and I'll assign it to the edit velocity. And you may get a message saying, this modifier is used already. I'm going to overwrite that because I probably use this more. So now when I come over here and when I have the selection tool, I can now just hold down my shift and control or command key, depending on your computer type, and have access to it. So again, that would be found under the settings. We'll see under editing tool modifiers, select tool, and then you could just put the modifiers that you want directly here in the edit velocity. And now with the select tool, you can just come right over there and adjust the clip gain without having to go to the lower left-hand corner. Okay, our next question mailed in. Can I use the logical editor to write in MIDI continuous controller data sweeps? All right, so I think with this question, someone wanted the ability to say, okay, I want to take a MIDI part and just kind of draw in like steady volume MIDI CT data like that. Okay, so let's come over. All right, so there's a couple of different ways. One is you could go to your drawing tool and you can say, okay, I want like a sine wave, and I'll just make this larger so we could see it. And I want to come over here, and if I hold down the shift key, I could adjust and kind of change the frequency. So if we want to draw that in, we could do that as well using the tools. Now, if you wanted this to be kind of completely automated, we could use a MIDI plugin. So let's come over here. We'll listen to like our string example. All right, so if I come over here, let's go to we'll select kind of our MIDI event. We're going to go down to our MIDI inserts. Okay, and what we could do is we're going to put our first MIDI insert. We're going to choose Auto LFO. Okay, so again to our MIDI inserts. And let's say I want this in this track, I want it to process and spit out MIDI CC1, because that's what's going to control our dynamics. We could have it automatically kind of going up or down. I'm going to do kind of a sine wave, and I want this to last not for a quarter note, but let's say for 2 measures. All right, so now as I play, so that's just kind of sending an LFO. All right, now if I wanted to just record that, we could go to our MIDI inserts here, and I'm going to drag this. When I hover over with the mouse, we'll see this white line. I'm going to drag that down. And when you drag that down, this means that when I hit record, this auto LFO is going to be recorded directly into the part. So we're hearing the process of MIDI CC1 going through this particular range. I'm going to just set up a range between, let's say, 43 and 120. Okay, so I'm going to now just go to my left locator, hit record. Okay. And so we can see that we have my MIDI CC data. I will just hold down select my glue gun, hold down Alt or Option. And now when we do this, we have that MIDI data that was being generated by the Auto LFO plugin will automatically be written into the part. Now, when you do this, it may be a good idea to make sure that the MIDI insert is turned off so it's not trying to do the same data twice. But now we could just come right over here and so you could probably also come over here to, if you want to do modulators. So let's say I want to do an LFO. Again, similar concepts, and I want this to be, and I will go to the instrument. Let's see if we could just assign it to the mod wheel here. So if I click on learn, doesn't do the mod wheel, but yeah, so try that particular Auto LFO plugin. I think that will allow you to write that particular data in. All right, let me jump back to live questions. Thanks for sending questions in advance. You could always send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so we see John Barry and maybe Alex wanting to maybe transfer a license. And if you can't figure it out, if we both want to email me, if you both want to do it, you could email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, and I'd be happy to exchange email addresses if you both wanted that. So. All right, so we see Michael Teams is saying Gareth says howdy to everyone. All right, we'll see if there's any more questions that come in. I think we're at the end of questions. Give it another couple minutes, see if other questions pop in. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. I hope that everyone has learned a new tip or trick. And again, if it's your first time coming to a Club Cubase live stream, we do this on Tuesday and Fridays, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. We usually go for 4 hours or until we run out of questions. You could check out topics that have been covered in previous live streams. Done over 44,000 topics by going to cubaseindex.com, or you could search and it'll take you directly to the particular live stream. We will have an index of all the topics that are discussed in today's live stream in the comments field with timestamps, so you could quickly navigate to those as well. All right, great to see Capital Razor on. And you could always send questions to me in advance for live streams to clubcubase@steinberg.de. There's usually a little bit, like 20 to 30 second delay from when I talk to when you hear me. All right, so we see Danielle has to get to sleep, early work. Thanks for joining us, Daniela. You'll give it just a couple more seconds, see if any other questions come in. If not, we'll wrap up. right. Thanks for the kind words from everyone. Thanks for the kind words, Adam. All right. So with that, I guess we will go ahead and wrap up. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy. And we'll be back on Friday for another live stream. Everyone take care, and we'll see you back in a couple days. Goodbye.